hopefully that won't hurt the sound.
We can hear a little bit of the wind, but we expect that since you're outside.
Yep.
So let me go ahead and get started since it's 10 o'clock, and I know we have some schools connected. Unmute your mic, Del Valley, and say hello to. This is Amy Bracewell, who's a historian at Mount Rushmore, and you can see she's outside. So unmute your mic and say hello.
Hi, I'm Chazer, and hello, Amy.
Hi, Del Valley.
And then we may have another school from Texas, I think out of Region 2. If you are connected and you can hear us, unmute your mic. I think we have you unmuted on the bridge, so unmute your mic and say hello to Amy.
Is this Cambridge?
No. What is the name of your school? Tell Amy the name of your school and what city you're in.
Evans Elementary School in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Great.
Awesome. Do we have other schools connected? North Dakota, Barnes County, did you join us? All right, any other schools connected? If not, you've got 2 Texas schools.
All right. Good. Well, Carol, are you going to do your presidential intro?
Yes, let me, I'll play, we'll get started with some music to get everybody in the mood. We appreciate everybody joining us today. This is a disclaimer. I'm sorry, I'll introduce myself again. I'm Carol Willis from Texas, and I'm part of this project. This is a disclaimer so that you know we are recording this event today, and we leave it up to the school districts to make sure that the students know and give permission to be recorded. This is the Presidential Primary Services Project. It is the, the 4th presentation by our partner, which we've had previous presentations by George Bush Presidential Library, the Harry S. Truman Library, Theodore Roosevelt Center, and today Mount Rushmore. Tomorrow we have a great presentation as well from Valley Forge, and next week from the Jimmy Carter National Historic Site. This is some samples of dates involved in this project. We've got North Dakota, Idaho, Texas, Ohio, and a group of people called the Internet 2 K20 Initiative. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Amy Bracewell, who's the historian with Mount Rushmore National Memorial Park. And as you can hear, she is actually outside at the park, and she will be talking about the evolution of democracy in America. So, Amy, I'm going to turn it over to you. And Corpus Christi, would you please unmute your mic and say hello again so that Miss Amy can see you and not me?
Hello!
Well, thank you, Carol, for that introduction. Can everyone hear me okay? Raise your hand if you can hear me.
We get the wind in the background.
Okay. I will try
Corpus,
to work on that.
say hello again.
All right. right. Thank you for joining me today. It is very windy out here. We were not expecting this. It's supposed to be calm today. We're expecting to get snow tomorrow. Right now, it's a high of 50 today here in South Dakota, which is very unusual for December. But tomorrow will be more like what we normally get with our winters and our snow tomorrow. So again, my name is Amy Bracewell. I am the historian here at Mount Rushmore National Memorial. It is such a great place to work. We get 3 million people that come to this park every year to view these faces. And there's different reasons why people come. People come to take their photographs, but people come for bigger reasons. It means something special to everyone. So, Evans Elementary, can you help me identify who are the 4 presidents on the mountain? Who's number 1?
George Washington.
Excellent. And who's next to him?
Hamilton?
No? Try again. He wrote the Declaration of Independence. Yep, Thomas Jefferson. That's right. And who has the glasses next to Thomas Jefferson?
Theodore Roosevelt.
Theodore Roosevelt. Yes, excellent. And who's our last president on the mountain?
Abraham Lincoln.
Excellent, yes. So we have 4 presidents on this mountain. And Del Valley, can you tell me why you think we put 4 presidents and these 4 presidents on the mountain?
Because the contribution of democracy.
Excellent. Good tie into our program today. They all represent major movements in American history and in the democracy of this country. So the artist wanted to represent how far we have come in this country, how far we've come since George Washington. So to give you a little background on Mount Rushmore, I want to show you where we are located. Can everyone see my PowerPoint?
No, we can't see it.
Oh. Okay. That's going to prove a challenge. Okay, let's try this again. How about now? Can you see my PowerPoint?
No, we can't see it.
Well, that's not good. So we will just switch back to myself. Well, we're located in South Dakota. And South Dakota is quite a long ways from Texas. And the state historian in the 1900s wanted to bring tourists to his state. So he invited artist Gutzon Borglum to come to the park, or to come to South Dakota, and create a sculpture that represents America. And Gutzon Borglum was the sculptor's name. He came up here in the 1920s and wanted to create a sculpture that everyone could identify with. And just like you in your school, that you were able to identify these presidents, our visitors are able to identify what this park means, and it means something different to everyone. So that was his main purpose of creating the mountain, was to represent the first 150 years of our nation's history. So going to his first quote, he took inspiration from the statement that man has a right to be free and happy. That's what artist Gutzon Borglum wanted to remind people in this sculpture, that everyone has a right to be free and happy. Dill Valley, can you tell me what that means to you? What does it mean that everyone has a right to be free and happy? Did we lose Dill Valley?
We all deserve the same happiness.
Excellent. Thank you, Evans. So it looks like we just have Evans. Did we lose Del Valley? All right.
We're here.
It's just you. Oh, there you are. All right. Can you tell me what you think it means that everyone has a right to be free and happy?
To be free is to express yourself, and happiness is to do what you believe in and follow it.
Absolutely. Yes. And these four presidents helped set that up. That it's what their decisions and the democratic process of their times helped set that up. That we can have laws and legislation and live in a country that ensures that we all have the ability and possibilities to be free and happy. So the first quote and primary source that I want to focus on today is a quote from the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson, who drafted these words, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So governments are created to put in laws and legislations based on the beliefs and the opinions of the governed. And that was written in the Declaration of Independence when we decided that we wanted to be our own country away from Great Britain. And it was Thomas Jefferson, who's on this mountain, that set into part these words and the thoughts of the start of our country. So he helped set into motion our government based on those words, that our government is set up to be governed by the people. And it's George Washington who continued this on. I'm going to focus on the mountain for a moment as I get to my next quote by George Washington. In his first inaugural address, George Washington talks about this government that we formed, that he helped form, and as the first president, he laid the foundation. He called our government and our land an experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. Now, Del Valley, can you tell me why you think George Washington called our government an experiment?
Hey, Amy. I'm sorry for interrupting. North Dakota, we have a school in North Dakota on as well, so be sure to ask them. Sorry for interrupting. Go ahead, Corpus.
Thank you.
Orange County North is here. North Dakota.
So North Dakota, let me ask you this question. Why do you think we are an experiment? Why did Washington call America an experiment?
Can you repeat that louder? I couldn't hear you very good.
Sure. Why do you think Washington called America an experiment?
they call America an experiment because we were like the first of its kind of like trying democracy, I guess, kind of.
Yep, exactly. It was kind of like a trial and error of figuring out what we wanted to be. We had the choice of any government in the world. We could have been a monarchy with a king and queen. We could have been any other type of government that was set up at that time. But it was through Washington and through our leadership after the Declaration of Independence and the Revolutionary War that we were able to decide we wanted to be a democracy where everyone, in a republic that had democratic process, where everyone had a chance to have a voice and a vote and to decide what they wanted to see in this country. So it was a very different time in Washington and Jefferson's time period than it was here today, and it looked very different in Lincoln's time. We had settled into the country. Lincoln, our 16th president, we had 15 presidents before him that kind of set us on track for what we wanted to be and the course we wanted to go. But it was Lincoln that had a crossroads to bear in his presidency. He believed in the words that Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal. And he believed that that should be a reality for all people in America, that we should all be equal. And it was on the land at Gettysburg, on the battlefield, that he gave his Gettysburg address. And the reason for the Civil War, freedoms that we gave.
Amy, we can't hear you. I guess if you can get closer to the mic.
I am standing right at the mic.
Okay. You need to repeat what you were going to say.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. So, Abraham Lincoln, Civil War. We were fighting for the freedoms that Thomas Jefferson had identified in the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal. And it was on the battlefield of Gettysburg that Lincoln called this Civil War a new birth of freedom for this country. That with the decisions that he made and that people made by voting him into presidency, that it was a new birth of freedom. Now, Evans Elementary, can you tell me what the new birth of freedom was for this country?
He set African Americans free.
Absolutely. Good job, Evans. So every time that we have a new decision in this country, every time that we have a new civil rights movement, we have a new birth of freedom in this country. And that's really important for this day and age because we're continuing those conversations. Every time our public gets to vote, every time we have debates about civil rights and freedoms in this country, we have a new birth of freedom that was identified by Abraham Lincoln. So it's a very different time period in Lincoln's time. He was taking a stand against slavery. He was saying that we need to make a reality that this country is free. And then we have Theodore Roosevelt, the last president on the mountain. Did anyone sit in on the program last week with Theodore Roosevelt, President Roosevelt in North Dakota? The North Dakota, excellent. Now, what kind of time period was he living in?
He lived around the turn of the 20th century.
Excellent. And what was going on at that time period?
The Panama Canal.
Excellent. Panama Canal, a lot of development in the country. We had factories that were building up, and we started seeing a middle class of workers that were working in our factories, working with the industries of the country, and it was a new time period. He had different problems than Lincoln had, that Washington and Jefferson had. He had people that were working that we had not yet implemented minimum wage, workers' compensation, safe working environment. And so he had a different struggle himself. And it was through this that he started working for the common man or the working man. And I'm going to switch to his quote. He wrote in his autobiography that he really struggled with what is the purpose of this government? What can the government do for people? Can you still hear me? I lost my TV.
We can still hear you.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. All right. So, Theodore Roosevelt, in his autobiography, he talks about what the individual can do to help with the country. And the quote I have for him, the primary resource from his autobiography, he says, "After all that the government can do that has been done, there will remain as the most vital of all factors the individual character of the average man and the average woman. No government action can do more to supplement individual action. A body of public opinion must be formed. It must make itself felt. In the end, it must be transformed and be transformed by the gradual raising of individual standards of conduct." So Theodore Roosevelt was a big proponent of individual action having an equal part in this government than whatever Washington can decide and what Washington can do for the people. Evans Elementary, can you tell me some things that individual action can do to help your community? Are you on mute, Evans Elementary? All right, I'll turn to our North Dakota school. What can we do based on Roosevelt's opinion that the individual can do for their community?
Could you please repeat your question?
Sure. So Roosevelt believed that individual action was as important as the government. So what can the individual do for your community?
Volunteer.
Absolutely. Volunteer. Anything else? Participate in local government?
Yeah, you could do that.
You could study up and know the knowledge of what's going on in the country and the world so that you can participate. There's a lot of things that the individual can do to make this country better. And it was Roosevelt that believed that the individual of this country was just as important as the government. And that's really a basis of this democracy of this country. So through these years and through the decades of our country and democracy, we've seen new laws and new legislation that allows for freedoms of culture and religion. Excuse me. That allows all of us to celebrate our cultures and heritage. We have laws and legislation that allows us to protect our special places like Mount Rushmore, like Yellowstone and the Grand Canyon, so that everyone can have public access to these and that they are here for our future generations. I want to leave you with one quote, and hopefully you can hear me. Actually, to begin with, I'll ask if there are any questions about Mount Rushmore or these 4 presidents.
Have you ever thought about adding a 5th president?
Good question. We actually get this question all the time. Most recently, it was suggested that President Reagan was put on the mountain. It actually went up to Washington, I believe, a couple of months ago. There are several reasons why we are not going to be putting any more presidents on the mountain. First of all, the mountain was the vision of one artist. This is an artistic expression of Gutzon Borglum. So anything else that goes up there really would not be his vision. So that's the first reason. The second reason, when he created this, he really knew every detail of all of the rock that's on the mountain. He started out actually, and I'll zoom in here. He started with putting Jefferson on the other side of Washington. You can kind of see that there's a blank space on the other side of Washington. They started running into bad rock. The rock just was not holding a face. So they realized that it couldn't hold any other faces on either side of the mountain. They had to actually blast Jefferson off the mountain and start over again. So that's another reason. There's really not enough rock left. The last reason is, in 1941, Congress completed this project as is. They said, this project is done. We complete and close out this project. No more work will be done on the mountain. And so it would really take an act of Congress to change that and to open it up again. I couldn't imagine how much money it would cost to get another president up there. One last reason to add in is that Borglum created the sculpture to represent the first 150 years of the nation's history. So any other president outside of that time frame wouldn't fit his original scope of what he wanted to represent. So that is a great question. We get it a lot. Any other questions?
How much did it cost for one president to get put up there?
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to. The whole project, all 4 presidents, took about 14 years to complete, and it took a little less than $1 million at that time period to construct the whole mountain. It was around $982,000. Of course, this was started in 1927. It ended in 1941. So you've got a depression going on in there. You've got a country rebuilding after the Depression. You've got the Great Dust Bowl going on. And then in 1941, we're getting ready for World War II. So money in that time period is a lot different than it is today. And we haven't done the numbers on how much it would have cost today, but I could imagine it'd probably be in the billions. Good question. Any others?
How many people does it take to make one face, like one whole thing?
Sure.
How many people participated in that?
It took about 400 people in all. And at one time, so they would do it in the summertime, because it was really not good work in the wintertime. They would have about 30 people on a face at a time. That was probably the safe amount of people to be up there at a time. So it'd be around 30 people working on a face. They finished them in different time periods. So we started in 1927. Washington was dedicated in 1933. And then Jefferson wasn't dedicated until 36. So they started working on them one at a time and then would eventually get to the next president on the mountain. Good question.
Can you go inside the faces when you tour?
No, they are solid rock. There is, hate to disappoint everyone, there's not a city of gold back there. There's not a lake behind them. There's not a house behind them, as you might have seen in North by Northwest. It is a solid mountainside, and they are solid figures. Last question?
What do most visitors find the most interesting?
I think visitors find the most interesting, and I don't know if I can get a close-up to show you, but let's see if I can zoom in. So you can kind of, I can't. So I think visitors find most interesting are the eyes. When you look at the eyes, it looks like they have a pupil in the middle of the eye. And it makes them look very lifelike. And what Gutzon Borglum and all of his workers did was actually to drill around a center shaft, so that center point in Lincoln's eyes is actually a core of granite that kind of has a donut hole carved around it. And so when you come to visit and the light captures the eyes, you pull back some. It has a glimmer of light, and it makes it very lifelike. I think visitors are most surprised by how many features there are. The glasses of Roosevelt that look real, that are in fact granite. I think people find very interesting. All right. Well, thank you for bearing with me with the wind and the technical difficulties. That happens out here in the field. We never know what you're going to get, and I thought we were going to have a very nice sunny day, but we can't have it all. But I want to end this talk of democracy and presidents with actually a recent quote that was made just a month ago. During his victory speech, President Obama talked about democracy, and I encourage you to read that speech. It's available online. But he talked about the importance of people and the roles of citizens in our democracy, kind of like what Roosevelt talked about, that the individual is very important in this democratic process. President Obama said, "The role of citizens in our democracy does not end with voting. America's never been about what can be done for us. It's about what can be done by us together through the hard and frustrating but necessary work of self-government." And that's the principle that we are founded on. That our debates and our talk and our TV commentators might get ugly and it might get very passionate, but it's all part of the process. That's what's taken us from George Washington through Lincoln's time in the Civil War, through creating equality and freedoms and standards for us to live by with Roosevelt, and us today in determining how that we move forward in the future. It's all about how we decide how to move together instead of splitting up or dividing the country. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope to continue these discussions with you. Feel free to contact me. We can continue our discussions about democracy. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Amy, and thank you for the schools that joined us today. I bet it'll be really cool to see it snow tomorrow. We're jealous here in Texas, but thank you so much. Your points about democracy and the continuation of democracy and its dependence on individuals is very critical, like you said, at this time. I mean, especially with this last election, it's been an interesting conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
And hey, Amy, we're not going to do this afternoon, so we're good to go for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.